The letter had been folded and unfolded so many times that the creases had nearly worn through. Elias Turner held it in his rough hands, staring at the neat, careful handwriting as if it might change if he looked long enough. The words were simple, too simple for something that would decide the course of his life. She is modest, hard-working, and plain in appearance, a good match for a man seeking stability rather than vanity. He exhaled slowly and set the letter down on the wooden table. Outside, the wind swept across the dry land, rattling the shutters of his isolated homestead. The prairie stretched endlessly beyond his window, empty in a way that had once felt peaceful and now only felt vast. Plain, that was what he wanted. No complications, no distractions, no reminder of the kind of life he had left behind. He leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes briefly. There had been a time when beauty had meant something different to him, when it had drawn him in, made him reckless, made him forget who he was. That time had ended badly enough that he had come all the way out here, to land that demanded more from a man than it gave. A plain wife would not tempt him. She would not stir anything dangerous. She would work beside him, keep the house in order, maybe speak a few words at the end of the day. It would be enough. It had to be. The stagecoach was due by midday. Elias stood, shrugging into his coat, and stepped outside into the pale light of late afternoon. The sky was clear, the kind of sharp blue that came with cold weather. The road that cut through the land was little more than a worn path, but it was the only thread that connected him to the rest of the world. He didn't go all the way to the town. He rarely did. Instead, he waited at the edge of his property, near the split-rail fence that marked the boundary. From there, he could see the road stretching into the distance. He told himself he wasn't nervous. He had made this choice carefully, deliberately. He had written to the agency, specified exactly what he wanted. No surprises. Still, as the hours passed and the sun climbed higher, something restless stirred beneath his calm. By the time he saw the stagecoach, a small dark shape against the horizon, his jaw had tightened without him realizing. The coach rolled closer, wheels crunching over the frozen ground, horses snorting clouds of breath into the air. It slowed as it reached him, the driver pulling back on the reins. "You Elias Turner?" The driver called. "That's right." The man nodded, then glanced back toward the coach. "Got someone for you." Elias stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the door. It opened slowly. A gloved hand appeared first, slender fingers gripping the frame, then a booted foot, carefully placed on the step. And then she stepped down. For a moment the world seemed to tilt. She was not plain, not even close. The woman who stood before him was striking. There was no other word for it. Her features were delicate but defined, her eyes a deep, clear shade that caught the light, her dark hair pulled back but still managing to frame her face in a way that felt almost deliberate. Even worn, even dressed simply, she carried something about her that drew the eye. Elias felt something twist sharply in his chest. No, this wasn't right. He had been very clear. The woman looked at him, and there was a flicker of uncertainty in her expression, as if she had expected something else too. "Mr. Turner?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. He forced himself to nod. "Yes." A pause stretched between them. She began, then seemed to gather herself. "I'm the one who answered your request." He stared at her for a heartbeat too long. This had to be a mistake. He prompted, his voice rougher than he intended. "Clara," she said. Clara Whitmore. The name meant nothing to him. He looked past her, as if expecting another woman to step out of the coach. No one did. The driver cleared his throat. "That's all I got, Turner." Elias swallowed the unease rising in him. "Right." Clara shifted slightly, her hands clasped in front of her. "If there's Some issue, no. He cut in quickly, too quickly. No issue, but there was, a big one, because this woman standing in front of him was exactly what he had tried to avoid. He stepped back, giving a short nod toward the road leading to his homestead. It's not far. She picked up her small bag without complaint, and together they started walking. The silence between them felt heavier with every step. Elias was acutely aware of her presence beside him, the sound of her boots on the ground, the faint rustle of her clothes, the way she moved with a quiet grace that seemed out of place in the harshness of the land. He kept his eyes forward. "You've come a long way," he said after a while, more to fill the silence than anything else. "Yes." Another pause. "Why?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. She glanced at him, then away again. "Opportunity," she said simply, "and necessity." That told him very little, but he didn't press. When the house came into view, small and weathered against the open land, she slowed slightly, taking it in. "It's quiet," she said. "It is." He wasn't sure if that was a comfort or a warning. Inside, the house was exactly as he had left it. Functional, sparse, everything in its place. A single main room with a table, a stove, a bed off to one side, and little else. Clara stepped in, her gaze moving over the space, taking in the details. "It's enough," she said softly. Elias watched her carefully. Most women, he imagined, would have shown disappointment. Or at least surprise. She didn't. She set her bag down and removed her gloves, flexing her fingers as if adjusting to the warmth of the room. "I can start with supper," she offered. He blinked. "You don't have to. I'd like to," she said, meeting his eyes briefly. There was something steady in her gaze, not timid, not fragile. It unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. "All right," he said finally. As she moved about the small kitchen area, finding what she needed with surprising ease, Elias found himself watching her despite his best efforts. She worked efficiently, without hesitation, as if she had done this 1,000 times before. But there was a lightness to her movements, a quiet confidence that didn't match the image he had built in his mind. This wasn't supposed to be complicated, and yet already it was. That night, as they sat across from each other at the table, the flicker of the lantern casting soft shadows on the walls, Elias felt a tension he couldn't quite name. "You expected someone else," Clara said suddenly. He looked up sharply. She held his gaze, not accusing, just stating a fact. "Yes," he admitted after a moment. "Plainer," she added. The word hung between them. He didn't deny it. A faint smile touched her lips, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's what they told me, too." He frowned. "What do you mean? They said you wanted someone practical, unremarkable." She paused, easy to overlook. Elias shifted in his seat. "That's not—" "It's all right," she said gently. "I understand." But he wasn't sure she did. Or maybe she understood more than he wanted her to. The days that followed should have settled into routine, and in some ways they did. Clara proved to be everything he had asked for in skill and temperament. She worked hard, kept the house in order, learned the rhythms of the land quickly. She didn't complain about the isolation, didn't shy away from the work. She was, in every practical sense, exactly what he needed, except for one thing. Her presence disturbed him. Not because she caused trouble, but because she didn't. Because she moved through his life with a quiet grace that drew his attention again and again, no matter how much he tried to ignore it. He found himself noticing things he shouldn't. The way her hair caught the light in the morning, the softness in her expression when she thought he wasn't looking, the sound of her laughter, rare but real, when something genuinely amused her. It made something stir inside him, something he had buried a long time ago, and it scared him. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned gold, he found her standing outside, looking out over the land. "You'll catch cold," he said, more sharply than he intended. She glanced back at him. "I like it here." He frowned. "There's not much to like." "There is," she said. "It's honest." He didn't understand that, or maybe he didn't want to. "You should come inside," he said, in a moment. He hesitated, then turned away, retreating into the house. He didn't see the way her expression softened as she watched him go. Nights were the worst. The small house offered little distance, little escape. He could hear her breathing as she slept, steady and soft. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind restless. He had wanted a simple life. He had built everything around that idea. But nothing about this felt simple anymore. One night a storm rolled in. The wind howled, rattling the walls, rain lashing against the roof. Clara startled awake with a soft gasp as a particularly loud crack of thunder split the air. Elias was up in an instant, checking the shutters, making sure everything held. "It's just a storm," he said, more to himself than to her. She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "I know," she said quietly, but her voice trembled. He hesitated, then crossed the room, kneeling beside the bed. "You're safe here," he said. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "I believe you," she said. The words should have been simple, but something in them hit him harder than he expected. For a moment neither of them moved. The storm raged outside, but inside there was a different kind of tension, quieter, more dangerous. Elias became acutely aware of how close he was, of the way the lamplight softened her features, of the warmth of the space between them. He pulled back abruptly, standing. "You should rest," he said, his voice tight. She nodded, though her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer. He turned away, his heart pounding. This was exactly what he had tried to avoid. Desire. It wasn't just inconvenient. It was dangerous, because desire led to mistakes, to choices he couldn't afford to make again. Days passed, but the tension didn't ease. If anything, it grew. Clara seemed to sense it too. She became more careful, more measured in her movements, as if trying not to disturb whatever fragile balance existed between them. But it was already broken. One afternoon, as they worked side by side repairing a section of the fence, their hands brushed. It was a small thing, accidental, but it sent a jolt through him. He pulled back as if burned. Clara stilled, her expression unreadable. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "You didn't do anything." He replied quickly, but the damage was done. That night he couldn't take it anymore. "I made a mistake," he said abruptly. She looked up from where she sat, mending a piece of clothing. "In what way?" "In bringing you here." The words hung heavy in the air. She set the fabric down slowly. "You want me to leave?" He hesitated. Did he? The thought of her leaving, of the house returning to its empty, silent state, sent an unexpected hollow feeling through him. "But the alternative, I don't know what I want," he admitted. She studied him for a long moment. "Then perhaps," she said carefully, "you should figure that out before you decide for both of us." Her calmness unsettled him more than anger would have. "I didn't ask for this," he said. "Neither did I," she replied. Silence fell between them. Then, more quietly, she added, "But we're here now." He looked at her, really looked at her. Not just her beauty, but her strength, her patience, the way she had adapted, endured, without complaint. And something shifted. Maybe the problem wasn't her. Maybe it was him. The things he had been running from. The things he had buried. He exhaled slowly. "I was afraid," he said. "Of what?" "Of wanting something I might lose." Her expression softened. "You can't live without wanting anything," she said gently. "I've tried." "And has it worked?" He didn't answer. Because they both knew it hadn't. The next morning the world felt different, not changed, but clearer. Elias stepped outside, the early light stretching across the land, and for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like he was standing at the edge of something empty. He felt like he was standing at the beginning of something uncertain, something real. When he turned back toward the house, Clara stood in the doorway, watching him. There was a question in her eyes. He walked toward her, stopping just a few steps away. "I don't want you to leave," he said. Her breath caught slightly, and the rest. He held her gaze. "I'm still afraid," he admitted, "but I don't want that to decide everything anymore." A slow, genuine smile spread across her face. "That's a start," she said. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't a promise of perfection, but it was honest. And for the first time, that felt like enough. As the wind moved gently across the land and the sun rose higher in the sky, Elias realized something he hadn't expected. The life he had tried to build carefully controlled, safe, untouched by risk, had never really been living at all. And the woman he had feared for her beauty might just be the reason he finally learned how.